Welcome back to the Point of Order podcast, an inside look at California politics and the state legislature. I am your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover, and joined once again, returning, he's back, the Honorable Assemblymember Joe Patterson from District 5.
That's me.
Yeah, Placer County, El Dorado County. Welcome back, man.
Neighboring district.
Yeah, my neighbor, yeah.
Represent most of Folsom Lake. Do your constituents know that?
I don't think they care.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
The beautiful Folsom Lake is in the 5th Assembly District, you know?
Yeah.
The dam is in your district, though.
That's true. We got the dam.
Yeah.
And we, control the water. Technically, we don't. Like the feds control it, but,
Yeah.
You have more of the golden mussels, though.
That's been a problem.
Speaking of which, we actually did a letter on that recently.
I signed it.
Yeah, we both did, I think. Yeah, on some resources to help clean that up.
A budget letter, right?
Yeah, clean up the golden mussel, get some resources in the trailer bill.
Yeah.
So, an ongoing saga, environmental saga. So we're going to get, obviously, lots to talk about. So we are currently in end of session. So we're final 2 weeks of legislative session. Lots going on. We can get into all that. Well, why don't we just start with that? How's it treating you so far?
I mean, pretty good. We spent how many hours on the floor yesterday and last week?
Mm-hmm. Many.
On resolutions.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, resolutions could be important, but our good friends on the other side of the aisle, they spent, out of the 5 hours we're on the floor, 4 of them were on immigration or Trump or whatever.
That's true.
Resolutions.
Resolutions.
And some legislation, but and I'm not saying those aren't important issues to address, whether I agree with how they're addressing them or not, but we have actual issues in California that we're not addressing. I was actually on this. Sorry, now I got to.
No,
I was on this
the
last time I was on this podcast.
Yeah.
You asked me what my prediction would be for 2025.
That's right, yeah.
And I said we will not address wildfire or the insurance crisis in this year. That's what I said.
You did?
We are not going to address either. Now, there is some discussion about maybe some deal on the wildfire fund or something like that, right? But at the end of the day, that doesn't address actual wildfire issues. That's more to keep it solvent, right? If there is a big fire.
Right. No, you're right. And it's, I would say, looking at the docket for the bills that we have coming up this week or these next 2 weeks, I mean, there's really nothing. I'm actually surprised how sort of non-consequential it is, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the whether it's the governor or, the leadership on the other side of the aisle, I mean, they give speeches about the most important thing, the affordability package, right? From the Democratic caucus. Is there a piece of is anything going to demonstrably address affordability this year? Absolutely not.
I would say it's probably on balance going to there's going to be bills make things more expensive. Yeah,
exactly.
Honestly, I don't think we're going to make progress, and I think we're going to probably go the other direction. All right, so before we dive into the stories, I'm going to take those as your takeaways of 2025 because basically your predictions came true.
Yeah, seriously.
But do you have any plans for the fall? Anything you're looking forward to once we're out of this place?
I'm really looking forward to September, being able to spend kind of some time with my family, actually.
Yeah.
The first few or last weeks of September, obviously district events. I mean, when you're in Sacramento a lot, you get kind of disconnected from what's going on, I am on a California delegation to Japan, which I'm actually pretty excited about as well, to represent California so we got, business
awesome.
Leaders, government
That's really
leaders,
cool.
Things like that. So I've never been to Japan. But there are a lot of things we can learn from Japan, from homelessness, how clean their cities are, things like that, right?
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
So what about you, Mr. Hoover?
Oh man, so I just submitted a passport renewal for my wife because we're just going on a cruise. That's about
nice.
So
You need one to go on a cruise. I mean, to get off the boat,
yeah,
probably,
so like
right?
depending on
Yeah.
where you go,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like if you have, if you go to another country, which most cruises do.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's. It'd be kind of a lame cruise probably if it just went to like L.A. to San Francisco. Or
Yeah. But if you don't have a
I guess you
passport,
go to
can you still
Alaska.
go on the cruise and just not get off the ship?
Probably.
But I mean, it'd be lame.
I don't actually
but
know
I'm just
that.
wondering.
I don't know the
you
answer to that.
Yeah.
You can also do like Alaska. Like we've done that where it's like you don't need a passport, but then you go to Canada usually. So
Do you like cruises? Obviously.
we actually do. I know
Yeah.
this is like people have very mixed opinions on cruises.
Yeah.
But I like that. Honestly, they're really affordable. For what you get, right? And then you just have to be okay being on a boat for a while.
Yeah, never been on one.
Yeah,
Never
you've
been
never
on
been
a
on one.
cruise. No,
Yeah.
I'm interested. But then my father-in-law, who's in the Navy,
Yeah.
he's like, "Why would you ever want to go on a cruise and be packed like a sardine, with thousands of other people?"
I mean,
And
that's definitely an argument.
but obviously that's like PTSD, I guess, from being on the ship, lonely in the ocean. So
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say it's not for everyone, but we enjoy it, and you don't have to you can go outside, like on the deck, right? You can kind of you're not necessarily stuck in a room the whole time.
Yeah, totally.
That's why we actually don't care about we always do interior because they're cheaper.
Yeah.
Because we don't even stay in the room. It's
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Whenever you go on vacation, I really don't care about the room. I mean, I want
Yeah.
the inside to be nice, but
Yeah.
the location I don't care about because you don't spend a lot of
Not
time
gonna really
there.
be in there.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. But I got to give props to. I don't know if this has changed. We're on the younger end, so this is the first time I've ever renewed a passport. I think we've each renewed our passport once.
Yeah.
And it was super easy to do online. We took our own photo, uploaded it digitally. Super easy. I was like,
Oh, you even did your own photo?
yeah.
Wow.
With an iPhone, you can do that.
Did
now.
it tell you it was like an
There's
acceptable
a
photo?
ton of rules, right?
Yeah,
for how
yeah.
to take it and lighting and no shadows and all that
Yeah, yeah.
stuff. But it has an AI feature where it'll flag it if it's wrong.
Oh.
So the first one I uploaded, it's like, no, the background's too dark. And so then we did it again and did the whole thing, and then it was like, okay, that one's good.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's super easy. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is. I got my son his a passport recently. It was the biggest pain in the butt because you have to go to the place and you can't get an appointment and you got to wait in line at 5 a.m. and all this
Yes.
stuff. It was insane.
Oh, see, I just got my two of my kids' passports.
Dude, it's the worst.
And I couldn't get an appointment. Eventually they opened up. I was going to fly to Texas to get them. I mean, I couldn't
That's
because they had
crazy,
none in
yeah.
California, but finally some opened up. So I went to San Francisco,
Yep.
and I was actually shocked at the customer service
That's good.
of the Department of State
so
in
you
a
did
good
the
way.
day of one though, or you did the last.
Yeah,
minute
I was
one.
when you
Yeah,
need
yeah,
one
yeah,
within a
like
couple
right now,
weeks,
yeah, yeah,
and it was good. The process still kind of sucks because Colleen couldn't go with me, so I had to get some affidavits,
Gotcha.
notarized
Yeah,
by
yeah,
her and all that. That wasn't like kidnapping my kids or
Right,
something.
right.
I am not kidnapping my kids, just as a side note, and taking them to a foreign country.
I'm
I don't
glad
know.
that you put that on record.
Yeah, on the record, my wife can have, responsibility of the kids. I'm not taking them from her. So we can share co-parent
Yeah,
on that. Just so
exactly.
the federal government knows that form is unnecessary because I don't want my kids by myself in a foreign country.
Yeah, no kidding, dude.
Yeah.
No kidding. Well, that's good. Well, hopefully these next 2 weeks will go by quickly. Actually, this podcast is going to release at the end of this week, so
nice.
we're recording on a Wednesday, a little later than normal. So we're only going to be a week out at that point of finishing up session, but it's the longest week of the year. Speaking of which, let's jump into our stories. So the big one, obviously, we talked about in the last podcast before the vote, but this is post-vote, was the redistricting legislation, right? So obviously a plan that was cooked up in a matter of 2 weeks or something to essentially ask the voters to approve a plan to redraw all of our congressional lines in California. I don't really want to dive too deep into this because, we already kind of know the situation. But what did you have any reactions to that floor debate or any of that, sort of period before this thing passed?
I mean, I think most people know it's fundamentally wrong. on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Now, as I predicted and as I said in the floor debate, the minute the governor said that that California was going to do this, that the rest, everybody else would get in line and pass it. But I think fundamentally, my private conversations, I think most people actually think it's a bad idea. Some have justified it with, well, Texas or whatever,
Right.
But it is so bad for our democracy for any state to do this mid-cycle because now we've set a trend and it's going to happen in perpetuity now.
So I don't say this a lot, right? So you say he got everyone on board, and that's mostly true. There was actually a story in the Bee or something about there's 2 Democrats that aren't on board, one being Jasmeet Bains, who voted no, who obviously is sort of, it sort of makes sense because she's running for Congress right now, and she really didn't want that to hurt her. So I kind of get that politically. But then also on principle, Alex Lee, and you won't hear this a lot, but very progressive Democrat Alex Lee was right. And I'm going to say it on the podcast because what he said was that this is going to trigger a redistricting war, right? And I got into a debate with a colleague that actually supported this, right? A Democratic colleague the other day. And it wasn't really a debate because I was like talking to him and I'm like, I don't think you understand how much I agree with you on this being wrong. And when I say this, I mean Texas, California, and he's like, because I had said something like, Alex Lee is right. This is going to trigger a sort of redistricting war across the country. And he's like, well, but we didn't trigger it. Texas triggered it. It's like, dude, it doesn't, fine. Okay, but that doesn't change the fact that it's going to trigger this, right?
Yeah.
And every state that does it after Texas is going to continue that cycle, right? So I just think that, on principle, Alex Lee was right, that this was just the wrong thing to do. Mm-hmm. And he ended up ultimately not supporting the effort, which I was actually kind of shocked by. And, I think on policy, on principle, taking the politics out of it, which I know is impossible, I think most people acknowledge it's not the right thing to do.
Yeah. And, I think it's really important, too, for people to understand. You and I walked in that morning with amendments to the bill that now took out any ties to Texas, right?
Yeah.
So California actually led the nation on the redistricting effort. At that point, Texas was kind of forced to act. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because California had moved forward with this. Yep. And so if there was any hope that Texas would drop their effort, it went out the door when California passed it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to watch. I know, there's gonna be a lot of news on this over the next few weeks. Governor Schwarzenegger obviously coming out in a big way opposed to this. Let's see, what was his quote? He had a great quote. And, obviously to your point, criticizing, what this means for democracy. This was obviously one of his big legacies was, helping pass independent redistricting, right? One of the few states in the country that has set that example. Mm-hmm. And I think this actually tarnishes our reputation long term, right? If California turns its back on this commission, even temporarily, right, for, as they're saying, right, temporarily, it does tarnish our legacy because we were taking the high road. We were, our voters had said, we're going to be independent of the politicians, right? We're not going to let the politicians draw the lines. Yeah. And this definitely takes us back on that. But he said something along the lines of we are not going to go into a stinking contest with a skunk.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
He's always got those
one-liners,
quotes. But, I think... I guess we were kind of the gold standard in having an independent redistricting commission. But I think what's important to say is it wasn't the politicians that came up with that
is a
right?
very
it was
good point.
The voters. Yeah. Yes, Schwarzenegger, was involved in that and making that happen. Also, he was an outsider, right? So it took
Total
kind of
outsider.
a non-politician to do it in the first place. But it was the voters and it was the people of California that went this direction, not the legislature. And the first opportunity that Democrats had to get rid of that thing, and by the way, the number one funder against the redistricting in the first place in 2010 was the Democratic Party and all their allies. were the top donors against it. So this has been something they've been trying to do since day number one. So it's no surprise that they're going to capitalize on this opportunity to only empower themselves. One last thing. Sorry, now you really got me started.
No,
when has anybody in California, including our Democratic colleagues, say, hey, you know what we really need in California is another Democratic elected official? Like, that would solve all the state's problems, you know? So,
well, look, I think James Gallagher made this point, right? Currently, our current lines, right? Republicans have 17% congressional representation, right? And that's just the current existing lines. About 40% of the vote went to the gubernatorial candidate, I think, in the last cycle for Republican governor, went to the Republicans. So you have 17% compared to like 40% of the state that's willing to vote for a Republican, right? That doesn't mean they're all registered Republicans, but and then you have 17% representation. This would take it down to, what was it, like 7% or 6%?
I don't even know.
Of the state. It's like 3 Congress people potentially is their goal, right? To get it down to 3 Republicans in Congress in California. That's like 6 or 7% of the representation in the state. And honestly, when you look at it like that, it really is, you know, people already get upset that they feel like they're not represented in California. And, you know, that I think it's definitely going to exacerbate those concerns,
terrible.
right?
Yeah.
And the Texas proposal that is, you know, fixing their lines or whatever, making it more favorable for Republicans, still brings the Democrat. I think the Democrats are still where we are today. That would be, you know, like before we even mess with our lines. So, you know, I mean, when you look at things in that context, but I think at the end of the day, I will say most of the reaction to this has been partisan and political, right? It's really, even the feedback we've received in our office is we actually agree that an independent commission is better, but we think this is necessary to sort of combat the federal administration or whatever, you know, national efforts to boost Republicans in Congress or something like that. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Speaking of representation, by the way, that will actually tail nicely into our conversation about our colleague James Gallagher, who I just brought up, about his bill to create what he is calling a 2-state solution. It would split the state, sort of coastal California. It would split the state into 2 states, basically. So you'd have a coastal California state, and then you'd have sort of an inland California state. What are your thoughts, sir?
I mean,
driven by these concerns about representation, right? To be fair,
yes.
I get a lot of people are ridiculing this proposal, but to be fair, this is something that responds to a large section of people in California that say, hey, we feel left out of the conversation.
Well, I think that's kind of the thing. And he got a lot of press on it, in a large part because he was being panned on it, right? You know, from various sources. But I think, you know, in this case, bad press isn't bad press, because what he was able to do is highlight the fact that a majority of the state, including many parts of my district, are completely ignored by what truthfully is, I mean, when they announce, you know, here's the LA delegation, right? And a third of the legislature stands
100%.
up. Like, if you were to explain to them, hey, you get your water actually not just by like from Northern California, but they come down wooden flumes through our forests and get down there. And every time there's a forest fire, those burn down and you can't get water, you know? But can we address this? And, you know, they don't, right? So I think it really just highlighted the fact, like you said, that many people in my district, a lot of, I think just Californians in general, don't really feel represented by what's happening in California. Now, the plan put in specifically, I mean, we could probably, you know,
I mean, people
there's
we'll
flaws with it. Let's just say
there are flaws.
Yeah.
And you are a co-author. I am not a co-author, and I kind of gave James a hard time because I said, James, you drew out Sacramento County. You're putting me with all the blue coastal cities. Like I'm gonna never, you know, be able to, you know, get good representation over there. Yeah. But you know, I think, you know, we'll put the story in the show notes if people want to click on it and see the map, right? I mean, it really is just sort of inland and coastal. I mean, it's pretty down the side there, but But yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately it's a long shot proposal. Obviously,
I mean, it's going nowhere.
It's not going to happen. But I think when I talked to James about it, his goal was to really just spark the conversation, right?
And he did.
He did. He definitely did that. So it was an interesting one for sure. Okay, really quickly, let's talk about the appropriations hearing. So we had our big suspense hearing on Friday. Obviously, this is the time of year when all of the bills that are tagged with a fiscal cost over a certain amount go to a very secretive, non-deliberative process called the Appropriations Suspense hearing. And your bills are either given I feel like what is like in the Coliseum. It's
exactly.
It's just like you get an up thumb or a down thumb depending on if they like your bill or not. And it's all done really behind the scenes. Actually, we had Assemblymember Josh Lowenthal, Democrat, on this podcast last year, I think, and he had a lot to say, a lot of complaints about the appropriations suspense process that you can go back and listen to if you want.
Yeah.
And it's secretive. It's unfortunate. But how do you end up faring in that? Just for your bills, I think you did pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of my bills were 28-aided, and what that means is basically they were on consent and have to go through that process. But I had 5 bills, and 3 of them made it out, so I was pretty happy with that. But the 2 that died were kind of interesting because one of them got out of the legislature last year and got to the governor, and the governor vetoed it. It probably was killed because of that. They didn't, I'm fairly confident the governor's office probably called down there and said, get rid of this one. And then the other one really didn't cost the state money, but what happens in this practice is the state agencies come out and say, this is going to cost us $1 bazillion. I mean, it was really just a clarification of a law. But so that bill died as a result. But but whatever. I mean, I'll tell you, the Democrats though, didn't listen to what Josh said, but they're just as irritated at the process as anybody else because they don't have any insight into how those decisions are made. It's it's literally like the chair and leadership. Doing this. So.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I was really actually disappointed in it. I got pretty screwed.
Oh, really?
I got 1 of 4. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's probably the lowest success rate I've had. I usually get 50% minimum.
Was there anything that you were just shocked on? I mean, other than 1 to 4, was there one where you
honestly all of it? I mean, one of them didn't totally shock. I mean, look, I know I'm going to lose bills, right? We all have to lose a bill or 2, right? So you always know you're going to lose something. But I had 2 bills that got killed. One of them was my number 1 priority bill, which was a district bill, public safety bill. I've run it for 3 years. This is the farthest it's ever got, and it does very, very little. It literally would, if you are convicted of child abuse resulting in the death of a child, it would not allow you to be eligible for fire camp where you can earn like double release credits. Okay.
Yeah.
Super simple. I mean, literally, this is one of the most narrow bills you could possibly think of. It got out of both public safety committees. This isn't crazy, right?
Yeah.
And it's for a constituent of mine. And I told the chair, I'm like, we need to get this guy a win. I just want to see that if you don't pass any of my other bills, this is the one, right? And that one died, right? So that's unfortunate. And then just a totally innocuous bill dealing with like the UCs and allowing them to do background checks on their employees when they hire them. They just need statutory authority to do that. And it costs nothing, and it died. And it's just like, that's the one where I'm like, why? Like, what is the reason for that? Like, I don't even understand.
Yeah. I get suspicions, but
So I don't know. I mean, it's frustrating, but some of the other ones. So some other notable ones that are dead for the year. So Senate Bill 445, which would streamline California's high-speed rail project. I don't know if you remember seeing that one. Actually, came through one of my
Did you
committees.
support it or oppose?
I opposed it
because my philosophy on that is. I'm opposed to high-speed rail. Let me just make that very clear.
100%. Yeah.
But if the state's going to move forward on it,
right.
I kind of feel like some of these environmental hurdles, let's not waste money.
Like reduce the cost, right?
Yeah. But
so
anyways.
It aimed to speed up permitting and ease restrictions that bill supporters say are slowing construction. It was backed by the High-Speed Rail Authority, strong opposition from local governments. I voted no on it in committee, mostly because I just don't. There's no way that I can support high-speed rail in any way.
Yeah, I get it.
And honestly, with the feds pulling funding, I mean, I just don't see anything happening in that project anyway, unless we're crazy enough to continue.
We are
money
crazy
at, which
enough.
I
The
know we
state is
are,
crazy
but we
enough.
don't have the money to throw at it. So I think at some point it just gets deprioritized. So that one died. Assembly Bill 938 to allow people to clear their records of violent crimes that they committed as victims of trafficking or domestic violence died, which I think is probably a good thing.
Who was the author of that?
That one, 938, is who is it? Mia Bonta. I should have made you guess. Darn it.
No, bad idea. I would have made a lot of people mad. But
That's true.
why? Who advocates for that?
I know. It's really frustrating. And glad to see that bill honestly get stopped.
Yes, thank God.
So every now and then, what's funny is I complain about the process, but then every now and then I'm like, I'm glad that got stopped, because you know that some bills like that wouldn't die on the floor, right? Or
Yes.
potentially would pass.
Because
and
the
then the
Dems
governor
don't
would
wanna
have to
vote
be the
against it.
backstop,
Yes.
right? Which I don't want to see either. So sometimes it works out.
Yeah.
SB 712. This was the Jay Leno bill.
That was too
Shannon
bad.
Grove. I know.
Yeah.
So this would have basically, if you have a classic car, I think older than 35 years or
Yes.
something, it would waive the smog requirements, which honestly, I mean, that's just not a big deal. I don't know why anyone would care. No, I'm saying it's not.
no.
I'm saying I like the bill, right? I
Yes.
don't understand why they would kill this bill. It
I
doesn't
almost
really
did a
make sense,
similar
you know?
bill because I have a guy in my district who makes like his own cars, that's his hobby, and he puts like 100 miles on them a year.
Totally. Yeah, I mean,
but
these
he
guys
can't get
just
them
drive them
smogged.
to shows, or
Yeah.
people just. It's a hobby. It's fun, right? And it's honestly a cool part of American culture and history, right? Like to have these car shows and all this.
Yeah.
Celebrate the ingenuity of the auto, industry and all that stuff, and it's sort of lame that
Not
bill.
in California.
Yeah, not here.
Yeah.
Not on our watch,
Yeah,
apparently.
yeah.
I did run into Jay Leno when he was talking about the bill. That was kind of fun. Saw him in
yeah.
the elevator. That was but yeah, that one died for the year. Let's see. Yeah, so I think those are just a few. I mean, there's obviously a bunch more. I mean, I actually don't have the actually maybe I do have the top line. Let's see. Rejecting or stall. So more than a quarter of the 686 proposals died in approach.
Yeah.
So
Not enough.
not enough.
But-
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So
I had my non-disclosure agreement bill. So
that got through, right?
It did, but just I think most people watching this kind of know about it. But what my bill would do is prohibit us legislators from signing non-disclosure agreements
Love it.
when it comes to legislation.
Yeah.
Right. So you
Yeah.
don't keep secrets from the public. And it got out of. I think it was on consent. I don't even know if it went to appropriations in the Assembly side, but it just kind of sailed through the process, gets to the Senate. It goes on suspense in the Senate, and you read the fiscal analysis, and they're like, this costs unknown money. Well, it only costs unknown amounts of money if you expect legislators to be convicted for signing non-disclosure agreements. And so then it gets out unanimously, right?
Yeah.
I was, I need to make sure I have the votes on the Senate floor.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Nobody's voted against it.
And you don't know if it's going to get out on the floor.
I mean,
Will the governor sign that, do you think?
it doesn't address the governor's office. I do think
Right.
a future bill could address the
Yeah.
governor's office.
Okay.
But at this point, I'm like, hey, show your true colors and veto that bill. You know what I mean?
I mean, honestly, it'd be a really bad bill to veto.
That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
It doesn't even apply to him, by the way.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to him, but it obviously hits some of the rumors
Yes.
and things that his party has sort of perpetrated on.
And he was involved with.
And there have been NDAs. We actually know there's been NDAs, right? There was NDAs on the Capitol Annex project.
Correct.
There were NDAs on what was that other issue? It was like
the fast food.
the fast food bill.
But
right,
not
right.
only that, a former Senate Majority Leader
Yeah.
actually said,
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
I sign non-disclosure agreements all the time. And it's like, okay, really?
That doesn't seem.
You know what I
something
mean?
A
So-
legislator should be doing on public business.
It
yeah.
actually seems to me to be already illegal, but so anyways,
Interesting.
it'll be, so
That's
that was on
fascinating.
suspense. It got out. Now it's on the floor, and I got to make sure it has
But let's
the
be
votes.
honest, they wouldn't put that thing on the floor, right? If They would have just killed it in suspense if they wanted to.
So that
kill
was
it.
my guess. That was
Right.
what I was guessing. But they want, they want to make sure I have the votes.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Well, good luck, because
Yeah.
I support your effort in that, and I hope that that bill, you've run that a couple years in a row, so I'm hoping it gets across the finish line this year. Big deal reached between, I don't know if you saw this one, between the state and Uber and Lyft. I mean, I say, this labor deal that was struck. So there was a bill, there was a bill in the legislature to unionize Uber and Lyft, which is something labor's wanted for a long time. There was another bill that Uber was running that should be flying through, man. I mean, it went through one of my committees. It's so obvious to me that this is the right, a good bill. And I believe that it's sort of, it was controversial, but it would essentially reduce Uber and Lyft's insurance liability in California. One of the biggest drivers of rideshare, and I don't know if anyone's taken a rideshare recently, it's not cheap anymore.
Yeah.
It's not cheap anymore. And I'm always asking Uber and Lyft, like, hey, so what is the biggest driver of your costs? Because when they came out, it was like, oh, this is a really affordable way to get around. It's going to be great for people with disabilities, or, people just that don't have a car, or whatever, like people that need to get around. And it was for a while. It's getting more and more expensive, more cost prohibitive. And one of the biggest drivers is their insurance costs. They have to hold like $1 million policy or something on every car, basically. And it's way beyond what's required for any other vehicle in California, right?
Yeah.
And so by reducing it to a more reasonable level in line with what everyone else pays, it would cover like 97% of claims, right? Like 97% of claims would fall into that category, right?
Yeah.
If they were just reduce this liability, and it would save riders a ton of money. It would save riders a ton of money. So this deal apparently, and again, I wasn't involved, but this deal was struck where there's some unionization provisions that are going to move forward, and then there's these insurance liabilities are going to be reduced, and everyone's kumbaya, and we're going to be seeing that in the next next week or so. So
I will withhold judgment until I see it.
I know.
But
Same here.
I doubt it will make rides cheaper.
I doubt it.
So I got to really think about that.
And there's something too about it's going to continue to allow them to be independent contractors but be unionized. Like I honestly don't really get how that works. But
I kind of feel I don't know how it works either. But I feel like people want to join a union, have at it. But also because I'm for a free association of people, right? But this probably isn't going to be. I don't know. It's probably going to be heavily recommended that people do, right? So we'll just have to see what the legislation looks like.
I mean, once you get these, that started, there's a lot of pressure, obviously, to join, and there's also a lot of, benefits to joining a lot of times. And so
totally.
They push people
huge.
to,
Especially in the trades and stuff. You think about
totally.
the benefits of being a union member are huge,
substantial.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see how that plays out. But that is something that came up, and honestly, it sort of sparks into our next conversation, which is sort of the hot off the presses story this morning, right? We're recording this on Wednesday morning, September 3rd, and it'll be released in a day or two. But the big story this morning, actually this Uber deal is mentioned in this story. So, but it is the ex-press secretary for the California Assembly Speaker, Robert Rivas, has sued the speaker and his brother for retaliation, as well as claims of political corruption. I don't know if you had the chance to read the story this morning. Let's just go through some of what the story talks about and sort of set the stage for this. So Cynthia Moreno, who was actually recently fired by the Assembly, was the press secretary for the Speaker's office. Has now put forward by the way, she was fired because of claims of sexual harassment that she participated in, or allegedly. And so she has now filed this lawsuit, which includes several alleged violations of law, including First Amendment right violations and bribery under the RICO Act. A lot of I was kind of bored last night, and actually this story came out really late last night.
Yeah, it did.
I actually read the whole lawsuit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I don't know why, honestly, because and it was I was just sort of like killing time, I guess. And so there's a number of things in there. So her complaint states that the Workplace Conduct Unit, which is the unit that was created in the Assembly to sort of handle sexual harassment allegations and things like that, she went to them that the Speaker and his brother funneled money to control the Speaker's office actions when it came to proposed legislation. The lawsuit talks about specific legislation that was influenced, right? Where all of these parties were involved, where there was money paid to his brother, who's a lobbyist, right? And then proposals were then shelved, right? So one was ACA 3, which is a bill dealing with the UCs. One was this Uber unionization bill as well that this deal just came out of. And so, a lot going on here. And honestly, it's all obviously allegations. I'll be honest with you. Number one, the lawsuit existing is challenging, right? Because we do have, and I actually worked on this many years ago with one of my previous bosses when I was a staffer, a Whistleblower Protection Act in the legislature now. Which we never had. State employees had these whistleblower protections that did not apply to legislative staff. And so when legislative staff would come forward with like whistleblower complaints, they would basically be told, well, sorry, we don't have protections. Yeah. You can be fired for that. You can be retaliated against without really any repercussions. A few years back, the legislature passed and the governor signed a Whistleblower Protection Act for legislative staff that basically says if you see something wrong or you come forward with information that is happening, you can't be retaliated against for that. So without, being able to say conclusively what is and what isn't, it does open you up now because of those protections. When you fire someone, that the fact that she allegedly, or actually, I think it's actually true that she did come forward with these complaints. I think that's pretty verified that she came forward with these complaints, whether they're accurate or not, and then was fired like a few weeks later or something. That alone is really interesting to me, right? So that definitely, the whistleblower complaint portions of this are interesting. But then the other thing I was going to say is, just reading through all this, all of the bills that she talks about and all of the stuff that happens, I don't want to say this conclusively, but it's just like a lot of it was like, that's what happens all the time in the legislature, right? Taking all of these names out of it, and that doesn't make it right. And that doesn't make it, any of that. But the stuff that you and I see on a daily basis in this building and the deals that are struck, and then, this person supports this person later, or even this whole redistricting thing where these people get congressional districts drawn for them in a proposal that is supposed to be fighting for democracy, and yet you have legislators behind the scenes like negotiating districts that they can run for Congress in. All of that stuff is ridiculous, and we see it all the time. And it's like, I hate to say it's politics as usual here, but it is a lot of the time, and it's disgusting. Yeah. But at the same time, like, is it illegal? And I don't know. Where that line is, but yeah. What do you have any thoughts on this? Because this was obviously a big bomb that got dropped last night. Everyone's still sort of digesting it. Curious what you might have to say about it.
Yeah, I think where there are a lot of allegations there. I have no idea, what's true, what's not. Obviously, I have no insight to what's happening at the Speaker's office.
Oh yeah, totally.
I think the concern, from the legal standpoint, maybe not in California, but really when you look federally, is the exchange of money because of legislation, and I think that's, and by the way, she's not asking for a lot of money. I think she's asking for $35,000 or something, and so it makes you wonder. And an apology
and a few other things. Yeah.
So it's almost like, maybe she wanted to just highlight some of the issues, right?
Interesting.
So I don't know, obviously what's going to happen and who did what, right? But I think at the end of the day, in terms of the whistleblower status and all those sorts of things, the one thing I found most interesting from the story is generally speaking, the workplace conduct unit doesn't really release information. And that's been a constant frustration from the press, right? Like, we don't have any insight other than numbers maybe, but, who made complaints and what was the finding. But this was a circumstance in which that information was released to the public, in which what happened from her case. And so so it just makes me question as a legislator, well, what is the standard? It almost seems like retaliation just to release that information in the first place. You know what I mean? And so,
interesting.
So I'm just curious, what
yeah.
is the standard of releasing information of their investigations? I would just like clarity on that without judging any particular party of these actions.
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, Speaker's office came out and, obviously vehemently denied. I should make clear, right? Vehemently denied all of this. I will say that sometimes, and I learned, was sort of told this very early on in politics, legality and perception are often, blurred, right? So maybe something's legal, but perception is not good, right? And so I do think when you have, two powerful people in two very powerful positions, it can actually, there's always, we came through, I was a staffer, you were a staffer at one point too, when we've seen some crazy illegal stuff happen, right, in the state capitol, right? And, I'll be honest with you, when I read these allegations in this complaint, it did not strike me like those things did in terms of, gun running and, actually accepting envelopes of cash, right? Like stuff like that we've seen legislators do in the past. Just some crazy, crazy stuff that people have gone to prison for, right?
Yeah.
In the past.
Gun running.
Literally.
Yes.
And I won't, you remember this,
that's
right?
an open case. People can Google it. A legislator's convicted of using their position to gun run.
And I will make it clear, a very anti-gun legislator was convicted, right? Of
a
running
San Francisco
guns.
legislator.
Which was insane, right? And that was like the year I started in the Capitol. This is when I was an intern and this was happening, I'm like, what have I done? Like, where am I? Like, this place is so corrupt. It's so it's so bad.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be a year when there was a lot of active cases going on like that. But
the congressman that represent currently and hopefully for a lot longer represents our areas.
Right.
Congressman Kiley.
Right.
He, I used to. I'm sorry if you're listening, Congressman. But I used to get a little. At first it would kind of bother me not bother me, but just concern me, the use of the word corruption to describe what happens in Sacramento. Because to me, corruption identifies a legal issue, something that's illegal, right? But what I've actually learned since, and a lot because of the congressman talking about this, is sometimes corruption, the laws allow it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm not talking particular to this case, right? But you can actually argue in general that just the whole campaign finance system of which people are soliciting campaign contributions is some level of legal corruption. In fact, a lot of countries would argue that about the U.S. system. Yeah. Now we can debate that all day. People can debate that all day long, but I kind of get what he's saying. Now that I've you sort of see it from this other side of what's going on and stuff. Corruption doesn't necessarily mean illegal, but to the public, what occurs is that corruption. Yeah,
and I think that's why people are so frustrated with what goes on here. And it's funny just being members of the minority party, right? People with, I would say, who oftentimes are observers of these deals because we're not in these deals, right? We're not part of these deals. Now, that's not to say that I know that there's Republican-led states where they're doing similar deals, because they're the majority. But in California, we are in the minority party, and we do a lot of observation of these deals. And you do look at a lot of deals very similar, like this Uber deal, right? This Uber deal is a good example, right, of something where it's like, like that is not something that you would say would normally happen, right? So there's obviously a lot of horse trading going on behind the scenes to make a deal like that come together. That's just the reality of politics and policy in the majority. And yeah, it's definitely, it's definitely raises some eyebrows, right?
And just to be clear on that, though, like negotiating legislation and debating the trade-offs of certain things.
Totally.
Like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, maybe we can do X, Y, Z, but it kind of requires, A, B, C to be able to make that work. That's not corruption. That's sort of, that's like negotiating with my children what they're going to have.
Right?
Yeah,
it's
compromise,
that's
exactly.
What's supposed to happen in policy, right?
So let's just be like, and I know you are super clear, like that doesn't necessarily, the negotiations don't imply corruption.
100%.
However, what does bother me is you and I are then asked to vote on these things, at the last day of session, and we've never even seen it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And it's like this cap and trade that's coming up, allegedly.
Which we didn't even have on the docket today, but that is probably one of the big ones coming.
Yeah. I have no idea. People are asking me to oppose it or support it or whatever. It's like, I have no idea what's in it.
I don't even know.
I can't tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
No, it's a good point. So we'll see what comes of this story. Obviously, stories like this get a lot of attention in Sacramento. I just want to make it very clear, obviously statements have been put out denying all these claims. So these are all allegations. And to be honest with you, when I read through the complaint, by the way, some of it, honestly, I was like, it sounds like you just disagree with the policy. You know what I mean? So there was one comment she makes in the complaint that says there was some, she had actually brought up a sexual harassment issue that was perpetrated towards her that was then substantiated apparently by the workplace conduct unit. And then that person was not, there was no accountability there, allegedly, right? That was the allegation. And then she brings up the irony that bringing down this Uber liability when they're involved in 2,300 sexual harassment claims is counter to, caring about fighting back against sexual harassment. And I just thought that's a policy disagreement. We're talking about reducing insurance liability for Uber, and there's a lot of strong policy arguments for doing that. And the fact that that's in the complaint, it just sort of struck me as well, it sounds like you didn't like the deal that your boss was striking with Uber. And, it's just that's a policy argument, right? That's a policy complaint.
Yeah.
So, but again, there's other stuff in here that's really concerning. So we'll see what comes of it.
And in fairness, in a lot of the litigation, you throw everything out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the judge or the court determines what to strike. So again, I'm not, we can't really judge any of it. 100%. I think we're going to be bystanders watching like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. Last couple things here, and then our clip of the week, and we'll get you out of here. I don't actually have this clip lined up, but San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan came out, slammed the governor, slammed the legislature last week, calling us sort of a joke. The fact that Prop 36 was not funded. It got $100 million in the budget. It needed at least 4 times that, if not more, right? Which is what we were calling for. He went on Inside California Politics, talking about this embarrassing, California is embarrassing when it comes to homelessness, mental health services, crime, and more. So this is his quote: "I'm disappointed, frankly. We said during the Prop 36 campaign, it's a 2-step process. The voters need to make clear that they expect accountability for retail theft and they want to see people get treatment. And then the governor and the legislature need to fund expanded treatment. It hasn't happened. $100 million in a $300 billion budget is embarrassing. It's a joke. It's not serious." And then they asked him about, sort of the governor's points that local governments are getting money to fund some of these things. And he says, "I think that's dead wrong. State leaders keep touting that we have the 4th largest economy in the world, have some of the highest tax rates in the world, some of the highest costs of living in the country. Bottom line is, when you have a $300 billion budget, it's about priorities. I can't think of a priority right now that is more pressing for many of our cities, many of our neighborhoods, than building the treatment capacity for addiction and mental illness to help our most vulnerable neighbors, give relief to small businesses, and make our city safe again." I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff, man. He's been really going after the majority, and he's a Democrat. I really appreciated his honesty and his willingness to do that.
Yeah. And this isn't the first time.
No.
You know? And I lived in San Jose for about 2 years, and was kind of familiar with the politics down there. They have a little bit of an independent streak in them, former San Jose City Councilman Pete Constant, who now lives in my district here, but he was elected in largely a Democratic district,
Right.
and there were other Republicans. It was kind of the same way, and I mean, I think the people there really vote to hold their city accountable,
Right.
but. I think the mayor's actually saying things that a lot of our newer colleagues, like in the last couple sessions, probably would say the same thing. And I am really excited, actually, to see some of our Democratic colleagues in particular who have been voting no on bills in committees and speaking out against various things. I hope when the mayor of a powerful, is that the third biggest city in California? The second biggest city? I can't really remember.
Yeah.
But when a mayor of that size with that kind of influence in the Democratic Party speaks out like that, it actually kind of helps empower other people, other Democrats to say, like, yeah, maybe we've swung too far to the left. Maybe we need to start addressing some of the issues that people actually care about.
Or maybe we can at least, not agree with everything that the governor's doing.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like,
wow,
I mean, here's the thing. It's like, we get a lot of crap, right, for the federal administration. And I am very clear on a number of cases with my colleagues, like, no, I do not agree with everything the federal administration is doing. Just because he is, we have the same letter by our name does not mean I agree with all the actions that are happening, right? I mean, obviously, I think that's pretty clear. But rarely do we see anyone push back on the governor. And James Gallagher actually brought this up on the floor the other day in sort of a pretty spicy fashion.
Yeah.
That, like, we just kind of do whatever the governor wants. Actually, it was my seatmate. It was Carl DeMaio. That should have been our clip of the week when he stood up the other day in the redistricting debate and he said, permission to use a prop, Mr. Speaker? And the speaker said, we're not allowing props today. And he says, then why are you all being props for Gavin Newsom?
Yeah, for his presidential campaign.
For his presidential campaign.
It was and everybody kind of chuckled, right?
Even the Democrats were laughing. I mean, that was one of the funniest things I've heard on the floor in a long time. But it was funny, but it highlighted a really important point. It's like, why are you guys just doing whatever the governor says all the time?
I mean,
push back.
I did say this in my speech.
Yeah.
We like you said, we get criticized all the time for like defending Trump or something. I mean, whatever that means. First of all, I want him to be successful. I mean, why would I not want the president of the United States to be successful? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
No matter who it is,
but that said, we get criticized for this, but how many resolutions have we supported this year asking the federal government to not make certain cuts, right? We've done a lot of that, kind of contrary to, some of the positions that the federal government's taking. Yet I have never in my life, this is what I said on the floor, ever heard one of my Democratic colleagues publicly say something negative about Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
Not a peep.
I know.
And maybe there's reasons for that. I don't know. But please do not lecture me. This is actually what I said. Please do not lecture me on not standing up to Trump or something because you haven't said anything.
Yeah, no, it's frustrating. Really, really have appreciated Matt's leadership, Mayor Matt Mahan's leadership in San Jose, and really being a voice statewide for a reasonable Democrat who is talking about public safety, who's talking about homelessness, talking about mental illness and housing capacity and all of these things, right? Issues we actually need to fix in California. So I think, really talented and obviously also kind of an outsider, came from the business world, was not a politician. No. And it's really interesting when you see these people that aren't typical politicians, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Matt Mahan, all these people, that it's like, oh, they're actually saying things people believe. And they're not just trying to focus group everything and, figure out, well, what do people want me to say, And so much of politics, I feel like, is people want authenticity. And Matt, I've had a chance to get to know Matt over the last year, and it's just been, he's a very authentic human being who really believes what he says. And I think people, that resonates with people. Yeah,
I really commend him for doing that. The Placer County Democratic Party gets mad at me every time I say this, but my parents are Democrats, a lot of my neighbors are, like a third of them are, right?
Yeah.
the way the Democratic Party, I'm not talking about individual legislators,
Right.
the way the Democratic Party rules this state in California is not the typical Democrat that lives in our neighborhoods that are concerned about the same things that the mayor is talking about. So he's actually giving a voice to the vast majority of Democrats that we represent.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, 100%.
Unfortunately, the Democratic Party itself does not subscribe to his point of view.
Not right now.
And
not in California.
those are the leadership. That's
sure.
what's driving the party and the policies in California, or sort of the extreme points of view.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, speaking of Democrats, Gavin Newsom. Okay, I'm pretty
heard
sure
of
that
him.
guy's a Democrat.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, clip of the week. This is an old clip. Been revived the last week. It was from 2018. Gavin Newsom, before he was governor, right? No. When did he get elected? Is he 2026?
2018.
Yeah, 18. So this was when he was running for governor. He said this. Want to get your reaction and then have a very brief discussion about Newsom, and then we'll get you out of here.
Affordability is number one. Issue of housing costs everywhere I go. That's the universal issue. Number two, people are just fed up with the homeless crisis in the state. No other state in the country as many people out in the streets and sidewalks as the state of California. I think if the next governor doesn't address the issue of affordability on housing, that governor will have failed. If we don't address the homeless issue in a meaningful way, we'll have failed also on a moral framework because it's a tragedy to see so many people self-medicating in drug or alcohol addictions, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, paranoia out on the streets and sidewalks. So those two issues for me have been most resonant on this campaign trail.
So, homelessness, got to reduce homelessness, got to make housing more affordable. I think there's around 130,000 homeless people when he made those comments in California. I think today it's over 180,000. Has the price of housing gone down? I'm pretty sure the median price of a home now is over 500,000, I believe, in California. $500,000. I'll have to check that, but it's done nothing but go up. What are your sort of thoughts on that clip?
Well, I mean, if 2025 Gavin Newsom goes back and listens to 2018 Gavin Newsom and actually, or if 2018 were to judge 2025, he'd say he'd failed. Yeah. I mean, the governor, right after he was elected, said we got to build 3.5 million houses in California.
That was his big.
Then, like a day later, he changed it to 2.5 million. As the vice chair of housing for 3 years now, the administration has not lifted a finger to effectively build housing in this state. Now, there was recently, they put some muscle behind a couple bills that came through, right? But by and large, I know it's hard to even give them credit for that.
But those weren't even, those were driven by legislators.
That's what I was going to say is by and large, housing policy is driven by the legislature. He hasn't done anything. Yeah. Now, homelessness, he's going to say, well, we spent all this money, we've done all this, we've done all that. Well, yeah, but I mean, what's the net effect? The net effect is the problem's gotten a lot worse under his tenure being governor.
Yeah, he judges success on homelessness by how many dollars he's spent. And the audit that I put through, right, that had bipartisan support that we looked at was $24 billion that he spent, and homelessness skyrocketed. And 24 billion taxpayer dollars later, we are 50,000 plus more homeless individuals in the state, more people that are drug addicted on the streets. We've rejected legislation cracking down on fentanyl and increasing penalties on people that deal fentanyl in the state. The voters had to step up and address that in Prop 36 because our legislature and our governor wouldn't, right?
Can I say something on that?
Yeah.
Not only did Newsom oppose Prop 36, but a lot of our Democratic colleagues opposed Prop 36 and continue to fight against Prop 36. It passed not only by 70% of the state, but it passed in every single one of our colleagues' districts.
Yeah. Yep.
And they're still digging in against it.
It's crazy. So, that's my thoughts on it. What he is good at, though, is launching task forces. He loves his task forces. I'd love to get a count on how many task forces he launched. Just in the last 2 weeks, he deployed he's deploying crime suppression teams using the CHP across the state. This is a page that he's used a number of times from his book. kind of honestly copying the Trump administration with the National Guard, sort of like, no, we're doing even better. We're going to do crime suppression teams, right, in cities across our state to crack down on crime. If you talk to CHP, they're pretty limited in what they can do because a lot of times the reason crime persists, I mean, some of it is numbers, but it's also enforcement, not just arrests, but do DAs have the tools necessary to prosecute? That's oftentimes the bigger problem because you can arrest someone all day long, but if the DA can't prosecute them for something, they just go right back out on the street, which is always the problem in California. So these crime suppression teams make for a great press release. Don't think that we're going to see a lot of results from that. And then he launched a new task force again. I feel like this is like the third one to clear homeless encampments on state property, right? Which actually is a huge problem. And in my district, I would love for one of those to come through because we actually I have a constituent who someone started a fire behind her house on a freeway overpass that the county could not address because it's Caltrans property, and the state has done not a damn thing about it, right? And so I actually would love to see them actually do something and actually, clear some of these encampments off state property, but time will tell if that actually happens. But despite all of this, right, this is what it's all leading up to. The most recent poll coming out on the presidential race for the Dem primary in 2028 or whatever, 26. What year are we in? 28.
Yeah.
Has Gavin Newsom leading, right? 25%, leading the Democratic sort of side. Kamala Harris is down below 15 or something, and you've got a few other people in there. Pete Buttigieg is like 16 or something. I don't know. But yeah, but I mean, really, all of this sort of like fight that he's putting out there, all the media attention he's getting, it really has been about sort of affecting his presidential campaign, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, I mean,
at least on the Dem side.
I mean, if you're a Democrat living probably anywhere in the nation, I mean, how many potential Democrats, presidential candidates, do you even know about, right? I
That's
mean,
true. That's a fair point.
I remember after the election, you kind of thought like, who's on the bench for the Democratic Party? There's like nobody.
Yeah, and that's he's seizing that opportunity for sure because there really isn't a deep bench, right?
Yeah, and also, like, just as a side note, is a prolific tweeter or Xer or whatever you want to call that app
Right,
now.
yeah.
My favorite app. Like, has he been, like, is he, I mean, I enjoy bourbon too, but I feel like maybe he's enjoying bourbon and tweeting at the same time because his social media platforms,
all the like all caps tweets, and I mean it's just a lot of
it's trolling Trump.
Yeah,
but I mean, really kind of started my first like thought into it was when the governor's press office, like his communications director, called me a bald little man.
I remember that. Yeah, that was wild.
And totally inappropriate.
Yeah, totally.
But then it kind of like accelerated. Now they're
I just love that you owned it. You're just like you
I
put
mean,
it in
there's
your
no
Twitter
denial.
profile and
I am little. I'm a man, and I'm bald. So.
So okay, real quick, Babylon Bee. Few headlines here. I got to send this one to my son. Family picture once again ruined by Aiden. I have an Aiden, so I'm gonna have to send that to him. Let's see. Navy recruitment soars after going back to blowing up pirates. I don't know if you saw that story. They took out a bunch of drug dealers on the ocean. Won't get into that.
I did hear about that.
Wild. Yeah. Stubborn Trump refuses to admit he's dead. I don't know if there was some story that like there was an actual headline that said like Trump refutes his death or something like that. I didn't. Did you see that? I don't know.
I keep getting these texts yesterday that he had a stroke or something. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know.
Wife's story once again interrupts Lord of the Rings soundtrack playing in man's head. I like that. 7 most dangerous effects of artificial dyes because of this. There's actually now a federal movement, not just in California, on these dyes, which I'm all about. Let's do it. Let's see. There's just not a lot of great ones this week.
It's always good when they troll California, though.
Because I know, those are my favorite ones.
They know that it's going to get a lot of clicks,
Chicago shootings down as the official guy who keeps track of all the shootings got shot. I mean, I don't know if you saw that story about Chicago. I mean, there's all these Chicago stories, but like just over last weekend, it was like 58 shootings or something.
Sad.
It's very sad. Anyway, we'll get you out of here, man, on that. Look, this is the last. This one went a little long, but it's the last podcast for a little while. We're going to be transitioning to a sort of some different content over the next few months. Having some non-legislators on here to talk about some issue-based stuff. I think I'm gonna even try to get my wife on a podcast.
Oh, good.
I'm really she's kind of introverted, but I think we're
You
gonna
should
do
get
it.
my wife on it too, like
We
both
think-
of them.
why
at the
don't we
same
do all
time.
4 of us should just go on it and like see what happens? That'd be fun.
I mean, will they still be married to us like at the end? I mean,
so
it's gonna
that's
come.
my biggest fear.
It's
right?
gonna be
That's my
their
biggest
like
fear.
rant session.
It's
about,
like, what do we
you know?
even talk about? Because there's tons of stuff I want to talk about, and then she's like, I want to talk about this. I'm like, we can't talk about that.
Yeah.
So, and then we're also going to do an episode breaking down sort of the bills that Governor Newsom vetoes and signs and all that stuff. So we'll be back with some future shows. You can email pointoforderpod@gmail.com. If you have ideas for the show, if you want to be a guest on the show, if you have some ideas for guests, that'd be great. Watch, subscribe, follow on socials at pointoforderpod. And you can follow us on X, our favorite platform, at Joshua_Hoover for myself. At Patterdude for Joe Patterson. Joe, thanks again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right, see you later.